America, it's grown up in America, and in many respects it's really a symbol of an American century and the triumph of capitalism and really of American values.
A skyscraper is a tall commercial building with an internal steel skeleton support system. The external walls of a skyscraper do not support its structure. But not all tall buildings are skyscrapers. Towers are also tall buildings made of steel, but towers are not built to provide places for people to live and work. The concept of constructing tall buildings is not a new one.
You know, the Bible has the story of the Tower of Babel, an example of human pride that takes us too far. What's the phrase? Pride goeth before the fall. Human beings have always tried to build as tall as we could.
Earlier civilizations were often motivated by three factors when they constructed tall buildings. One was a desire to please the gods. This inspired the ancient pyramids of Egypt. Another was a lack of space, which often forced people to build upward, hence the cliff dwellings of the American Southwest. A lack of space in urban areas prompted owners in medieval Europe to add additional stories to already completed offices and shops. A third factor was ego. The effort was not so much to get closer to God, but to be equal to Him.
Well, look at the Gothic cathedrals. It was a battle between the bishops. My nave is 130 feet high instead of 100 feet high, and things like that.
But it was more than just a battle between the bishops. The cathedrals of Europe were often the product of collective ego that translated as civic pride. At heights approaching 500 feet, these towering stone structures had flying buttresses to support their massive, thick walls. The Eiffel Tower was partly the product of civic pride that swept France in the late 19th century. Built for the 1889 World's Exposition, it served no practical purpose. It was, however, made of iron. The use of iron allowed for the tower to reach a height of 986 feet. But office buildings in the mid-19th century continued to use ancient construction methods.
When architects first designed tall buildings, the only way that they could figure out how to do it was to use the masonry itself to support the upper floors of the building, so that when you build a very tall building that was a masonry structure, you ended up with walls that were maybe 9 feet thick.
The taller the buildings, the thicker the walls, reducing valuable rental space. When wrought iron was introduced in the mid-1800s, wall thickness decreased. However, wrought iron had inherent problems, and buildings using wrought iron supports never reached great heights. In the late 1800s, architects began using a far stronger material. It would give America the height advantage.